Well, welcome back everyone to another episode of Meet the Author. Today I have Kandi Steiner here with me, and we're going to be talking about not only your newest book that you just published, but a bunch of other fun things. You were one of the queens, I want to say, of sports romance writing. You were so good at it. So I know
Thank
some of the people are excited, but I have to ask you, since you love to write sports romance, kind of an icebreaker question. What is your favorite sport? Maybe not to write, but to enjoy. Do you actually enjoy maybe watching some of these sports?
Oh yeah, I am a football girly through and through. I've been born and raised on football, so I was born in Oklahoma. And when you're born in Oklahoma, they either put you in an OU onesie or an OSU onesie, and like they determine your fate from like day one. And then my parents were really into football, so my dad was a huge Dallas fan, my mom a huge Kansas City fan, and I'm a smart woman, so of course I cheered for mom's team. Until I moved to Tampa, and then I became a Bucks fan when I was like 16 or so. So I was a huge Bucks fan. I am a season ticket holder, even though we've moved to Tennessee. I still am a season ticket holder. Like I plan on going to at least half of the home games, even though I live states away now. So huge football girly.
I think we have to be best friends now because I live in Oklahoma and I went to OU actually. So
Shut
I'm a
up!
Sooner girly, and then I grew
Yes,
up in Texas. So I was Dallas Cowboys girl, and my other half is Kansas City Chiefs. So
yes. So you get it. You
I
get
get
it. Like honestly, I cheered for OU like all growing up, and like even when I moved to Florida in high school, and I still wanted to go to OU. Like the only reason I didn't is because you can go to college free in Florida if you like have a certain GPA. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll go somewhere in Florida. But like I still cheer for the Sooners, and like I'm an Oklahoma girly at heart. So
Love that. Didn't know that you're from Oklahoma. That makes us even better. But yes,
yeah.
I am a Sooner. Went there for 4 years. Absolutely love my Sooners. Love football in
Oh.
general. I literally dedicate my time in the fall. I think I like to say that's when my reading takes a little bit of a hit because Fridays are for Friday night football, Saturdays are for college,
Yes.
Sundays are for the NFL, and then Mondays are for Monday night football. So it's
Yes, and do you do fantasy? Because fantasy, like, takes over my life in the fall. I'm like
first time I did fantasy and I wanted to do it so bad. And the funny thing is, as I was like committed, ready to do fantasy with my family, and my boyfriend got the invite instead of me. And then they were like, oh, we're out of space. So I was like, he gets to do fantasy and not me.
rude. Well, now I'm definitely gonna bully you into reading the Red Zone Rival series, because if you actually love football and watch football, I think you'll appreciate it, because I put all of, like, my football knowledge into it, and I made sure it was, like, super, well, I do this with all my sports romances, but I wanna make sure that it's actually realistic and, like, like, not something where they're a student athlete, but yet they have all the time in the world to go hang out and, like, party, because that's not really how it works. So,
No,
anyway, I think you would love it.
no, I love that. And there's not going to be any bullying needed. It's like high on the list. I just, honestly, next month, let's see, August, it's like everyone's getting into that preseason, like football camps have started. They just had the
Perfect timing.
media day this week, like last week, I think. So I'm in the football mindset. I'm ready for it.
Yes, perfect.
And not football related, we'll go ahead and jump into your newest book. This one is more hockey related, but it is the first book in your newest series. I like that we have two different covers to show
2
here.
different covers.
The one with which I read it on my Kindle first, and so I had his face to look at the whole time, and I
Oh,
was like obsessed. I was
I can't. That thumb on the or finger on the lip just kills me. It kills me.
I'm
Love
not
it.
normally a like book cover, like a person on the book type of cover person, but I was just every time I opened my Kindle, I was like having to stare at it for a minute. I was like, I really like you.
Hi.
So good. But then if people, if they're not a book person on the cover, I also love the discreet one. It's so cute. And so Meet Your Match is your newest book that it was the beginning of this month that it just came out. So for
Yeah.
people who maybe have not heard of this book so far, kind of talk us through what you can expect if you're jumping into this new series that is your hockey romance.
Yeah. So this is book one in my new pro hockey series, which I've wanted to write hockey romance forever. I actually have purposefully never read a hockey romance because I knew I was going to write them one day. So I maybe once I'm done with this series, I'll indulge myself and go back and read some other hockey romances. But book one is about Vince and Maven. So Vince is Tampa's like new rookie. He's a total like hotshot. He's really talented. He's the kind of guy who can back up his shit talking because he's just that good. And she just got this new job with like a town or like city famous influencer group. So they're called the Tampa Bay Babes, and they cover everything from like the best restaurants in town to events that are happening, and they're very well known around town. So she goes to the sports gala, And she is kind of like rolling her eyes at all these like rich people who are like donating their money like in a silent auction, and she's like, cool, they can go home and like pat themselves on the back at night. And she sees this really ugly vase and she's kind of like making fun of it, and Vince walks over to her, and so they're joking about it back and forth, and come to find out it's actually his vase. And she's getting all up in his face. He's like at her throat. And it's just kind of like an instant, I wouldn't say like enemies to lovers, but I guess kind of like those kind of vibes where it's like a dislike. Like they just don't like each other and they annoy each other. And then she finds out 2 days later that she is being assigned to follow him 24/7 on and off the ice in unprecedented all access to the Tampa Bay Ospreys, which has never happened before. So it's forced proximity, kind of that enemies to lovers vibe, high tension, high spice, just very like fun, kick your feet up and giggle, like all the like the banter that just makes your stomach squirm. That's definitely what you're gonna get in Meet Your Match.
Oh, I was totally giggling. I was literally sitting there, like, on the couch with my Kindle, and I'd just be like, my boyfriend, "What is your deal?" And I was like, "You don't understand." I'm, like, blushing over here. It's so good.
Yes. Oh my God. And the audiobook, like for any of my audio girlies, it's my first time doing duet audio where like the guy speaks all of his parts, even if it's in the girl's point of view. And it changed the game for me. Like listening to this book on audio, the banter, the back and forth, it's chef's kiss.
Oh, I have to go back and listen to it because when I first started listening to audiobooks, I think I set myself too high. I started off and like the very first audiobook that I ever read was like that, where it was like the guy said every single part, even in her POV, and then hers was the other way. And then I started getting into other audiobooks and I still love them. I listen to so many audiobooks because it helps me just read so much faster. But I was like, there's something different about like having him speak everything and like her, the opposite, and it's so good. So I didn't know that the audiobook was already on there.
Yeah.
On my reread before the
Without it's
next one
ready.
comes out, I have to do it that way.
Yes, yes, yeah, I agree. Like, I love listening to audiobooks, and the first one I listened to that had that duet audio was Flock, I think is the name of it, by Kate Stewart. And I was like, man, this just changes the game because when you can hear them kind of going back and forth, it just like it feels like you're in the moment with them. And I was obsessed. So this was our first time producing it, and oh my god, the narrators are so good. The spicy scenes, like, do not listen at work. That's all I'm gonna say.
That's so good. So you've written other sports romances. How was it kind of you said you've wanted to, go into writing hockey, but what kind of preparation did you have to do to be like, okay, it is time, I'm going to get in and I'm going to write my hockey romance?
That's a great question. So when I'm writing my football romances, so much of that knowledge is just like second nature for me because I've grown up around the game. So like I understand the rules, I understand the penalties. When I need to write a game situation, I can throw myself exactly into like, okay, I want it to be where they're down, but they're like close enough to catch up. I know like everything that to write to make that happen. But with hockey, I've only been a hockey fan since I was like 25, so really only for about 8 years now. And so there's a lot of it that I still am like trying to understand. So I did a lot of research on rules specifically and like penalties. And I go to Tampa Bay Lightning games all the time as a fan. I'm a huge fan. But this time I went to games with the like writer mindset. So I booked tickets on the glass so I could really watch up close and like see what was happening and get that sort of experience. And then I got tickets for up at the club level so I could kind of sneak peek into the boxes of like, they're like the wife and girlfriends are up there and like stuff like that. So I was kind of like eyeballing all of that situation. And then I also got tickets right next to the tunnel so that I could see the guys coming in and out of the tunnel and like watch them interacting when they came on and off the ice. So I was like feverishly writing questions like, why do they take their sticks like this? Why is this way? Why is this way? Why do they smell salts before they go on there? Which apparently the salts just smell really terrible and they like smell them and it just like gives them a little jolt of energy. Craziness. So anyway, so I had all these questions though, even after going and even after researching. And thankfully, I have a reader who her husband is in the pro hockey circuit and has been for like 11 years. So he played in the NHL, he played in the AHL, and right now he's playing in the ECHL, which is
Okay.
over in Europe.
Mhm.
So I asked her if I could interview them, thinking it would be just like a 30-minute, like quick thing. We talked for 3 hours straight, and I got all of like my series ideas, like things that happened in this book. Like I got so many ideas from them. Like one of his biggest fantasies was hooking up in the team gym. And so he inspired the gym scene. And he also was talking about all the crazy shenanigans that happen at the rookie party. So that gave me an inspiration to write the rookie party. So that was Josh and Gwen Brittain, which is why I named Jackson Brittain to kind of like honor him. So
That's so cute that you have like a little story with that. And gym scene is 10 out of 10 for people who have so good. I laughed so hard when I think it's like a few days later and she's like, "You took care of the audio," or she's like, "There's not any audio, right?" And he was like, "I took care of it." And she was like,
yeah.
"There wasn't any audio." He was like, "I'm saving it for me to listen to."
Yeah, she's like, "You better delete it." He's like, sure, I'll delete it."
So good. It's so dedicated that you bought tickets. Not only, you were going to those games, but you had like special places. You're like, all right, got to be close to them. Got to be by the tunnels. Got to see where the wives and the girlfriends are. Like that's dedication, but I love it. That's so awesome that you did all of that to, make this book
Well,
happen.
I'll tell you one of my biggest like pet peeves as a sports girly is when there's a sports romance and they don't get the sports right. Like either if there's no sport actually happening in it or like the sports part of it is wrong and like doesn't make sense and it just drives me insane. So I try to do as much research as I can. And obviously like we embellish a little bit in romance, like we wiggle things around to make it work for our stories, but I want it to be so realistic that like God forbid if a hockey player actually picked this up and read, actually God willing, a hockey player picks this up and reads it, that he would be like this is actually realistic and like this is sick. I love that she did her research on this.
Please, everybody, send this. If you know anybody
Yeah,
hockey, send them this book. Tell them they can read it on their phone on a Kindle
for
app.
real. I legit like I shoot my shot all the time with the Tampa Bay Lightning and stuff. Like I know they're a really big league or hockey team, so I'm like maybe they'll follow the Kraken's lead and like embrace it a little bit. But I think the Kraken have like book talk kind of cornered. Like they've got our hearts.
That's awesome. That's so good. So, talking a little bit still about this series, you have your next book already, in the works. Talk a little bit about what's to come for the next book in this series and what people can get excited for.
Oh my gosh, I just got like a flurry of butterflies. So I'm like 23,000 words into Watch Your Mouth, which is book 2. Um, Brief spoiler. This is your warning. Skip 10 seconds ahead. It's about Jackson and Grace. Okay, there's the spoiler. So, but this book is a road trip romance. It's teammates, little sister. It's also age gap. So there's all these like already kind of like forbidden elements, but also forced proximity things happening. And those two are like my favorite things to write. But it's crazy. Like sometimes this magical thing happens when you're writing and it doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like you're sitting down and being like, okay, this is my word count goal today, or like, I have to move the story forward. Sometimes you sit down and it's like you black out, like you live a movie and you're just like, you're seeing everything happening and you're just, blah, blah, blah. And that's what this feels like. I haven't felt this way since I wrote Blindside, which is probably the last time I really felt that like all consuming, like wrapped up feeling. And it doesn't mean anything. Like I love every single book that I write and I put my heart and soul into every single book that I write. It's just some of them come easier because the characters are just so much more vivid in my mind. And this is definitely the case with them. So I'm really pumped. I'm loving writing it. It's definitely more on like the fun and kind of silly side, whereas Meet Your Match was very like, enemies to lovers, like frustrationville. And this is more like, like he's gone for her like the first time he meets her, but he can't have her. It's his teammate's little sister that's like, he's strictly said, like, everyone stay away from my sister. And she's 8 years younger than him, but he like can't stay away from her. So I'm loving it.
Love it. So excited. And is that going to be later on this year that you think, or maybe early next year that one's going to be out?
Yeah, so this one comes out October 27th. So you can pre-order it now. It'll be simultaneous audio, so everything will go live on October 27th.
So exciting. And again, I freaking love this
Yeah.
series. I love best friends, like little sister, teammates, I don't know what it is about that. It's just one of those things that I'm like always there for. Like
Me too.
you give me that trope and I'm like, okay, I'll read it.
Yes.
Just questions, like so good. And at the very end of this book, when you kind of see a little bit of their interactions before, going into the next one, I'm very excited. We already did our little spoiler thing, so I'm not gonna say who, but the people, if you read it, who are interacting at the end, you can see what's to come in the next book. I'm very excited for that.
Yes, me too.
So I have to ask, where do you get, I know some of the probably football and other things, but where do you feel like you get most of your inspiration from?
Oh, that's a great question. I always get this question from like writers who are like, "What's your number one piece of writing advice?" or for new or aspiring authors. And like, I know there's all this technical advice I could give on publishing or social media or whatever, but my go-to is always to tell them to get out and live life. And like, I mean, like, you know, break somebody's heart, have your heart broken in return, face your biggest fears, take different ways to work, like try hobbies that you've always been like, "Oh, I would love to do that, but I never could." Like anything that stretches your mind and kind of puts you in a new situation. That's what really does it for me. Traveling is huge for me. So when I travel, I kind of travel with my eyes wide open and I'm really looking around. I'm people watching. I love to sit at bars and talk to strangers, like one of my favorite pastimes. And once I get them talking, my question is always, "Tell me about the first time you got your heart broken." And so you can always see the like shift in them when they're thinking about, and like I can see the ones that instantly know, like they have that person that instantly comes to mind. And then the other people are kind of like, "I don't know if I've ever had my heart broken, like I don't know if I can swing in there." But either way, they give me character inspiration, which if you've read any of my books, like my characters are first and foremost what I focus most of my attention on. Everything else in the story just kind of happens because I feel like I know my characters so well. So yeah, so I get inspired by traveling and just like doing new things, trying new things, talking to new people, and really never saying no to anything. At least twice. I always say I'll try something at least twice before I say no.
All right, I have to ask you since you like to travel, where is the coolest place that you've ever been to?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm very fortunate. I feel like I've traveled a lot in my like 33 years of life. So it's hard to pick a place, but last year, my husband and I, we eloped and we got married in Austria in this place called Achensee, which is basically it's a lake that's a beautiful alpine lake. And we stayed and got married at the little Gramailm. It's like a little chalet up in the natural park. And it is just the most gorgeous place in the world. Like you walk out and you're in this valley with these like really dramatic mountains everywhere around you. There's cowbells everywhere because there's like free range cows who are just living their best lives. And this beautiful alpine lake below. And I just, maybe it's because I got married there too. I just like, I have such a visceral memory of everything that happened there. And I like, that's for sure my favorite place I've ever been. So,
That's awesome, and especially again that you got married there, so you have a memory.
yeah.
Like not only is it a beautiful place, but you have a beautiful memory that you can attach to it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now I have to ask you, since you said you never say no twice. What's the craziest thing you've ever done?
Craziest thing. Oh my gosh. I do a lot of crazy things. I mean, I think pole dancing is definitely one of those things that I did just thinking, "Oh, I'm gonna tick this off my list and try something new," and now it's like my whole personality, and I'm obsessed with it. And I do think a lot of people think it's crazy. So, especially because like pole dancing kind of has like a sexual, element about it, and so people kind of have a negative connotation of it, or they have respect for it. There's really no in between. And so some people saw me from the very beginning when I showed up in like a baggy t-shirt and shorts and was like, I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea. I failed and like looked terrible. And now I've been doing it for over 5 years and I usually work out in nothing more than like a thong and a bra now. And like, I'm just like really comfortable in my body. And that was such a huge experience for me life wise and writing wise. Like it really helped me write, I feel like stronger female characters when I stopped hating my body so much and hating myself and hating like everything that I had been taught to kind of hate about myself and instead shifted that mindset to like loving and appreciating and being like wow, like my body does so much for me and I am sexual and that's okay and I can own that. And now I feel like I have like unleashed these like badass female characters in the past like 8 or so books that I've written. So I really love the way that that's like taken shape on my writing journey.
That's awesome, and I love that. Again, you said that it not only is good for you and it's impacted you, you're probably mental just health in general too, loving yourself, and that's I think one of the most important things. But how you said it even impacts your writing and the fact that you can write strong women. I think so many people need to see that because
Yeah.
especially bodies. I mean, as women, that's like one of the biggest things that we struggle with is we compare or we don't appreciate or you want to be someone else, you don't like how you look, all those other things. And to a lot of times, you look at TV shows, you read books, you see all these other people depicted like certain ways. And so having female characters that you write so strongly that you can tell that they're confident in who they are and everything. I think that's really important to so many females. And I love that you are
Yeah.
doing that for people who
Mm.
maybe aren't as confident in themselves, but they can go to pick up one of your books and be like, you know what? Maven's really confident and I
Yeah.
really good about myself because she's confident about herself and she's owning things. So I think that's really cool that you have channeled
Well,
that
thank
into
you.
yourself, but also with your writing.
Well, I think like it's impossible as a writer to distance yourself too much from your writing. Like there's like a part of us in each and every story we write. And so like just as an example, one my first breakout book, my first bestseller was a book called Weightless, and in that story, it's a plus size heroine, but she's like unhappy being plus size, and she's like on her journey to like be in better shape and like have a better like healthier lifestyle. And while like I appreciate that that was part of my journey and my thought process at that time, and that I definitely like, I feel like that book inspired a lot of women, and a lot of women felt seen because we all, I feel like, have gone through this like mindset of feeling like we have to do certain things or look a certain way or whatever. So I respect it, but at the same time, like if I wrote that book today, it would be completely written differently because like my mindset back then was just so different, and I've grown up so much. And I have a better understanding now of like how incredible our bodies are despite what size they are. So if you read Weightless and then you read Hail Mary, which is also a plus size heroine, it's like night and day different as far as like how they feel about themselves and how they act and their confidence and everything. So it's kind of cool. Like, yeah, I kind of have had the opportunity to grow up in my books. So it's really special because I have like a little snapshot of my mind in time, you know?
That is really cool. I mean, especially too, 10 years from now, you'll probably look back at where you are in this time and you'll even be like, oh my gosh, I've grown so much even since then. And it's
Totally.
crazy how our minds work and everything. But I love all of those things. I have a hard question for you now. And some people have not been able to answer this, others have had not any problem with it. But do you have a favorite book of yours? I know it's like asking people to pick children. I'm just curious if
Yeah.
you have one that maybe just like immediately comes to mind. You're like, yes, that's my favorite.
I have so many favorites, but my top favorite is probably On the Way to You, which I wrote and published in 2017. Um, it was my first book that I wrote as a full-time writer. So Revelry allowed me to quit my like big girl job and write full time. And then I wrote and published On the Way to You. But it is a road trip romance and very emotional, very angsty, and definitely like a commentary on depression, which at that time in my life, it was the first time where I was kind of dealing with that. Like I had a lot of friends who were coming out and saying like I'm depressed, and I think I was 26, 27. And so it went from like being around all my friends where it seemed like everybody was just living a normal happy life, like we all just had so much going on, right? It was like college, and then we were fresh out of college but still partying like we were in college, and like, it was all just like happy, good times. And then all of a sudden you have the real life settling in, like the real world settling in, and it was heavy. And seeing the difference in like how my friends with depression were perceived when they came out, um, it was just mind blowing to me because so many people just had no empathy for it, and so many people couldn't understand it. And then it was like, well, you don't have a right to be depressed because your life is so great. And it really made me stop and dissect what it means to be depressed and why it happens, and how to love people through it without sacrificing your own joy and things like that. So that was really me exploring that. And basically, I took the happiest girl in the world who grew up with absolutely nothing and like the worst situation ever, and then the boy who had everything but is like the saddest boy in the world, and I put them in the same car and sent them across the country together. So it's one of my favorites, and some of my most poetic like writing, I think, is in that book. So
That's awesome. I have not read that one, but hearing how you describe it immediately goes and adds its mentally it's going there. It's already
Yes.
one of those that I add to the list. Now, on the same kind of note, not book wise, but do you have a favorite character maybe that you've ever written?
Oh my God. Okay. So she's not out yet, but I'm writing Grace right now. And she is just like, I think the favorite character I've ever written ever, like boy or girl. I'm really obsessed with her. I'm loving the journey she's taking me on. And she reminds me a lot of myself too, which is probably why. But of the books I have out that you would actually know, Leo fucking Hernandez from Hail Mary, like I'm obsessed with him. I think he just like wormed his way into my heart big time. And then from that same series, I really love Riley. Riley doesn't, she gets a lot of hate. She's in book one and she is a really strong female character, which is what I love about her. I think sometimes as readers, we're harder. In fact, most times as readers, we're a lot harder on our girls than we are on guys when we're reading. Like the guy can literally do everything wrong and we still like will forgive him and love him and be like, she's not good enough for him. But if she so much as like has a vertebrae, we're like, no, we don't like it. Right. So Riley was really strong and stood up for everything that she wanted in life. And also like she set boundaries for herself and basically said like, I will trust you until you don't have my trust anymore. And at that point, like, I don't owe you anything. And I loved that about her. So anyway, she's also a baddie who plays football on a team of men. So like
Yes.
instantly love her.
I love that. I love that so much. So I have to ask, since you've talked a lot about your writing and everything, which obviously is the forefront of this. This is Meet the Author. But what do you like to do when you are not writing? What is your favorite things to do in your spare time when you are like away, shutting down the writing process, and you're just trying to, do something else?
Yeah. For me, hiking is huge. Like I love to hike. We actually just moved to Tennessee because I wanted to be closer to places to hike. So that's a really big one for me. Pole dancing and pole fitness is huge. Yoga and the gym, reading, of course. And I also just like to. I'm in this weird time in my life. Like I used to love to be out all the time and like going and doing and all of that. And right now I'm in like a nesting phase. So I really love to be home. I'm really enjoying like we just bought our first house, so I'm really enjoying like decorating the space and like making it feel like ours. And like we planted trees, and it was so hard, and I was sweating and I was frustrated. But then at the end of the day, I was like, we planted trees, and I was so happy. So that's kind of my mood right now.
Oh, I love that. Buying your first home is such like a big and exciting fun thing too. And it's so awesome that you're getting to do all those things and planting trees that already it sounds like a lot of work, but hey, if you stay there long enough, 10 years from now,
Yeah.
your trees are gonna be like, I remember when you were small.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Okay, so if we're back, we'll take a break and now we'll go back to your writing. What is your typical writing process like when you're, sitting down and you're getting ready to write a book? I know we've kind of talked a little bit about like the research and everything, but when
Yeah.
you're shutting out, getting ready to go into this, what is your writing process like when you go into writing a book?
Okay, I'll try to make this short because it's very detailed and I could get really granular with it, but I won't. So my books usually start as like a flash in the pan idea that hits me. Either I'll see like a scene or a dialogue or a character or a situation, and it goes into my phone immediately. So I'll show you. If I type in, basically, I would add a note to my phone and I would title it book idea. And so that when I search it, as you can see, like I just searched book idea. I don't know if it's going to show there, maybe. And so this is like all the notes in my phone that are labeled book idea. And I mean, it just goes on forever. So, so that's really where it starts. And then eventually one of them starts talking louder. And then eventually I start writing note after note for that book specifically. And I'm like, another idea, another idea, another idea. And then once it starts to really feel like it's calling my attention and it needs me to write it, then I sit down and I start planning. And it always starts with characters for me. So I spend a ton of time figuring out my characters. Like I know everything from their zodiac sign to their Enneagram number. Like I take them on walks and get to know everything about them so that when I'm writing, I never feel stuck because I know my characters so well that I know exactly what they would do in any given situation. Um, so that's probably the most fun part of my process is kind of dreaming up the characters. And then I'll write, I usually have at least a like soft outline where I know a few big points that are going to happen or a few scenes or dialogue that I've kind of dreamed up that I want in there. And then I fill the gaps. So I'll start planning like, okay, well, this is how I want the opening. This is how I want this. Act two here, act three here, the end, epilogue, whatever. And then I start writing. So when I start writing, I usually give myself a word count goal per day to start out. And then towards the end of my process, it's more of like a scene per or like a chapter or scene goal because I can kind of see the end of it. And the beginning is always the hardest for me. Like, I don't know about you, but I can tell in the first 15% of a book if I'm going to like it or not. And I take that really like serious as a writer. So if I have 15% to get you hooked, you better believe I'm going to spend all my time on that opening to make sure that I've got you dialed in and like ready for more. So that's a really big part for me. Every Friday, I send whatever I've written unpolished to my alpha readers, and they read over the weekend and send me notes. And while, of course, they send me any questions they have or critique, my alpha readers are primarily what I call like my cheerleaders and my hair petters. Like they're there to help me keep going. Every author has imposter syndrome, and we all have this brain that tells us we're not good enough. And so that brain starts talking to me, and then I see the feedback in my inbox that says like, I loved this, keep going. And that's kind of what keeps me on track. And then I finish the rough draft and I send it to my beta readers, which is a handful of readers who read the full rough draft, and they give me the harsh critique. Like, this is the part where I'm like, if you were going to tear me up in a 1-star review, tell me everything you would say, and then what would make it better for you, or what would have made it a 5-star book for you. And sometimes they're like, it was great and I have nothing to say. And sometimes it's small feedback, and sometimes it's a lot of really big feedback that takes a lot of time to work into the manuscript. So I always schedule about 2 weeks of really aggressive editing after I get my feedback. And then I send it to my editor, who edits it again. And then I do her edits. And then at that point, I'm pretty confident that it's ready to go out for like advanced reader copies and go get recorded for audio and all of that. So I know that was a long time for me to be talking about that, but it's hard to like condense it.
No, that's awesome. And it sounds like, again, I mean, at this point you've been writing for a while, so it sounds like it's a very like well-oiled machine and process that you have going from kind of start to finish. And I was, kind of thinking as you were talking, and I know it's like a very common thing with writers that people say they're either like a plotter or a pantser, but it sounds like you're kind of in between. Like,
Yeah.
plot, like you start to put the things on your phone and you have like certain scenes that you want to hit, but then you're like just writing to kind of get them in between. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong if you're not, but it kind of seems like you fall like, I forget what they call them, like a plantser or something. Maybe
Yeah.
you're
Yeah,
in.
totally. Yeah, and it's completely changed. Like, I mean, I've been publishing for 10 years now, and like books like, for instance, Weightless and A Love Letter to Whiskey, I was completely pantsing those. Like, I didn't plot any of that. It just happened as it happened, and I would sit down that day and be like, what do I want to write today? Oh, maybe I'll do this and whatever, and just like sent it. And now I think because it's been my full-time job for so long, I definitely I take it more seriously, and I'm like, this is my career. And so I just feel like now I take a little more time to make sure I write everything out, so that when I sit down to write, I'm not worried, I'm not stressed, I don't feel like I'm stuck. I don't have to spend 3 hours trying to figure out what I'm writing. I can just sit down, read my notes, and be like, boom, I know exactly what I'm doing, and get right into it.
That's awesome. So, kind of as we're wrapping up here and everything, I want you to tell people where they can easily find you and all of your books and stuff. So, if they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with her," like I am, they
Oh.
can find everything that they could possibly want to read by you.
Well, I'm obsessed with all of you. I am like huge on hanging out with people on social media. I love to feel like friends with all my readers. So you can find me anywhere you like to hang out online. So I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, I'm on the archaic Facebook, I'm on Threads and loving Threads right now. And I even have a Discord. So if you don't even want to do social media, but you want to hang out on Discord, I have a great Discord group. But all my books are on Amazon. They're all in Kindle Unlimited. Almost all of them are in audio, like all of them except for maybe my first like 3 books are in audiobook. And Watch Your Mouth comes out on October 27th. Meet Your Match just came out, so you can dive into your Kandi Steiner hockey era right now. Highly recommend the audiobook if you're an audio girly for that one, but of course it's in Kindle Unlimited as well. So
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on here today. It was so fun talking with you and just getting to pick your brain about, your sports romance books. And again, like you put so much effort into these books and like your time and just the research. And I think that's incredible. And I think it's so smart too, just because like you said, it's kind of grating when you go to read a book and you're like, did someone actually do
yeah.
this or did, like as a meteorologist, if I've read a few books that there's like stuff with the weather and I'm like, what?
That wouldn't happen.
That's not real. Like, and then I'm like, okay, do I want to keep reading this or like, whoa, just turned my light all around over here. But yeah, so I love that you, take the time and effort to do all those things. And again, it was so fun having you on today. Is there anything else that I didn't ask you that you maybe want to share with everybody before we go?
I don't think so. But I just want to say, like, thank you for your time and your effort. I think it's so important for, especially for indie romance authors like me, to have readers who are passionate like you are and want to talk about the books they love. And so the fact that you have a booktube and TikTok and Instagram and all that stuff, it means so much to me. And anybody else who's watching or listening who also does that, just know like it doesn't go unnoticed. I'm very aware of, everything that y'all do for us. And it's so, so, so appreciative. So thank you so much for having me and for reading and loving and talking about all the books.
Yes, thank you so much for coming on. And you guys make sure that you are saying subscribe to all things happening here at Michaela's Book Nook. So for our next author interview, you don't miss anything there, and for book reviews and more. And until next time, thank you guys.